Hi everyone, and thank you for being here and then listening to my talk. A little bit about me. You can find me on pretty consistent user handles. It starts with Abe and then 4 and then whatever the thing is that I have an account on. So I am Abe for Git on GitHub, Abe for FDV, which stands for Fediverse on Mastodon, and Abe for Disk on Discord. I added this crudely cropped Discord picture just now before the talk because Preston was so kind to also show my avatar on Discord, so you may recognize me a bit better. I've been working with Ember for exactly 5 years, pretty much. I joined the company Red Pencil 5 years ago, almost on the dot. And yeah, it's been fantastic. Love working with Ember. Love the community. I'm just gonna quickly start my timer here because I think time is a bit tight. I love music. I play guitar and just recently started going to a music school for piano as well. A bit about Red Pencil. You may have seen our name on the sponsor boards a couple of times. We are a company based in Belgium, although most of us work fully remote. We specialize in interoperability and data modeling. And we use RDF for that, which is a W3C spec specifically designed for interoperability between various different databases. So RDF stands for Resource Description Framework. We're committed to open source. We try to push it as much as we can, all our projects. And luckily, because we have a lot of government projects, we are able to actually just put all our code publicly on GitHub, which is fantastic for debugging. I highly recommend it because you can just send Preston the repo. And yeah, we basically just use Ember, have always, and hope that we always will. All right, just a quick before I kind of get going. Ember is a lot of things. So it's a rendering framework. Obviously, it's a bunch of things. But today I'm only interested in the first part, so the rendering part, as you will see. Then just a quick word on the project that inspired this talk. It's like my baby. I've been working on it for 5 years. It's the reason I joined the company in the first place, because it's a complex UI project, which is exactly what I was looking for. I kind of wanted to go into game development, but I also wanted to make money and not die. So that's why I looked for a project that kind of feels a bit like that, but actually makes some money. It's a text editor, quite a complicated one, its UI is made with Ember. The text editing engine is Prose Mirror, which is my favorite library ever. It's fantastic. The kind of gimmick of it is that it can make and edit machine readable annotations. Again, using another W3C spec, but I'm not going to go too much into that. Here's what it looks like. And it doesn't just look like it. This is actually just rendering here in my slides. So I can, wait, I need to go, hang on. I need to go to here. And then I should be able to click and type something. Yay! Woo. Believe it or not, this is an Ember app. And it's not an iframe, which is important for me, maybe not for you, but you will see later in the talk why I think that's important. The UI is Ember, everything, and the text editing stuff is Prose Mirror. But I can do some cool things. For example, let's say I want to annotate this phrase with some extra information. I can click here. You don't really need to know what this means. But what this does is it kind of puts this little box around it. And a bit crazy maybe, but this tiny box is an Ember component. So we have Ember with Prose Mirror, with Ember inside of it. And the text inside of it is again Prose Mirror. And I can do this again. So I can go here and wrap it once more. And now we have Ember within, so Prose Mirror in Ember. Oops, sorry. My bad. This one. Yeah. And so we have a bit of an onion. So that's going to be a recurring theme throughout the talk. You may have noticed in the title, this is kind of what I called it, Ember with the angle brackets, with the brackets, sorry. And this is what I kind of envisioned by that. I want to, this editor that you just seen, I think is doing two really cool things with regards to Ember. First of all, it's an Ember app that's just installable as an NPM package, and you just give it a DOM element and it'll render inside of it. We've kind of seen a little touches on that in various talks, but I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. That's the Ember app part. And also this thing with nested components inside of other frameworks. It would be cool if you could just call Ember component as a function, I think. That's why it's called Adventures in Imperative Systems. So let's start with this component part. It's kind of going to sound a bit like what Nick did, what Nick talked about yesterday, but the exact opposite. So Nick rendered React and was it Schmiact and Svelte in an Ember app, yeah, we are going to basically render Ember inside of other frameworks rather than frameworks inside of Ember. So frameworks, I mainly mean things that render to the DOM. I do think we know what framework means, but I mainly wanted to highlight that it's not just front-end frameworks. It's also things like Prosemare, Leaflet, stuff like that, anything that can render stuff. It's and those are actually more interesting use cases in my opinion. Most of these frameworks have a common theme where if you want to customize the way they render, the way you do that is you just create a DOM element and you give it to them, and they make sure that it'll appear in the right place. That was D3. This is Leaflet, and this is finally Prosemare. It's a bit more complicated, but it's really only like the first line that this .dom is that's important. And just in Prosemare, it happens to be a class instead of a function. But it's the same thing. You just need a DOM element. But like, who wants to actually write DOM elements? Like, nobody wants to actually use that. So what if we try to use Ember to generate these DOM elements? And of course, the first thing you're going to tell me is like, hey, just use in element. Yeah, it's kind of a really good tool. In element, you can just create a DOM element yourself, which you would then pass to the framework, and then you can use in element to let Ember render inside of that place that you've defined. And like, that's really powerful, and you should probably use that first, but it has some limitations. And specifically for us, it's this deep nesting of state inside of state inside of state with like little DOM elements rendering at various times. That's just an absolute nightmare to manage with in element, as in we couldn't figure it out. So we really wanted to be able to still tell Ember, hey, I'm going to give you a component, just give me the DOM. Don't do anything with it, just give me the DOM. I'll take care of the rest. Storybook also uses this approach. The first trick you're going to see, we kind of were heavily inspired by Storybook's way to render classic Ember. So before Ember 6.8, I wanted to give this talk last year, and I think I could have done, as in I could have done this talk last year and this year, because so much has changed in the past year in this space, as in even like of a couple of weeks ago, this 6.8 stuff. But let's say you're not on 6.8 yet. We are an add-on, so we have to support quite older Ember versions. This is kind of the ugly hack that we figured out. Basically, the idea is like, how do you even instantiate a component in Ember, right? Usually you don't do that. You just tell Ember, this is my template, and Ember takes care of instantiation and everything for you. It's declarative. But you can instantiate components by using the owner. I think owner register, I don't really know how this exactly works, but it's basically these two lines. I think it's the owner.lookup line that actually instantiates the component instance. And another thing is that, well, okay, with a component instance, that's still not enough. You need to be able to attach it to DOM that you control. And that's why we use classic components, because if you, the scrolling doesn't actually translate. Fantastic. Let me then scroll here. If I can, please. Go down. Yay, okay. This is like the last line. This is the most important one. An Ember classic component has this append to method. I don't know if it's public API, but it's definitely not mega advertised. So what we just do is like we make a node, we make a DOM node, we append the component, and then the return just gives it the prose mirror to render, and that's what you saw basically happening with that those green dots. That's how that works. But there's a better way if you can go to 6.8. And as in, yeah, like as I was preparing this talk, this RFC for render components got merged into alpha, and I think now I don't know what stage it's in, but yeah, it's basically there, and it does exactly that, but just nicer and supported by the framework, and it just makes you feel safe and loved when you use official APIs rather than ugly hacks. But it's really it's convenient, very convenient for us, and we're going to be moving to it as soon as possible. It's still going to take a while, probably. This is the render component RFC. So yeah, you all know the RFC website now, but if you didn't, then you can still scan this QR code. All right, that's how we kind of imperatively render components whenever you want them, wherever you want them. Now the second part, what if we could call the whole function as an app? We could just say Ember, hey, get started. We want you to render in this location. And the reason we've done that, or we've had to do that, is basically people came and saw our editor and were like, hey, that's cool. I have an Angular app. How do I use it? And I'm like, well, you don't. But that wasn't really an option. So yeah, we had to figure out a way, and we figured out this way quite a while ago. So again, there's going to be two stories. So how do we package our crazy onion in a nice little box? So pre-Vite, like I said, there's two stories. Before Vite, like you do an Ember build, you get an AMD bundle, which is meant to be run into, which is meant to be run by the browser. It's not really meant for NPM or anything like that. And what the result of that is, you get a bunch of files in your dist folder that look like this, vendor.js, vendor-bundle.js and stuff. And this is what you want to do. You want to be able to import these in some Angular app or something and do something with them. But yeah, that just doesn't work. Like we tried. I actually seriously tried to get Webpack to understand these files, and maybe someone who's much smarter than I could have done it, but I didn't manage to figure it out. So we found an ugly hack, of course. What we did is to tell the bundler to just ignore the fact that it's JavaScript, just treat it as a string. And then we make an iframe. And then I'm going to have to scroll here again. So just give me a second to get to the right position. Yeah, all right. Make an iframe, and then we just inject all that plain string JavaScript, which for us was about 5 megabytes of just strings into the iframe, and we let it render, and then yeah, then you have an app. It takes like 5 seconds, but it was fast enough. And the fun fact about that, if you do this, you should also remove that JavaScript after you've let the app boot and it's all in memory. Because otherwise, if you open your browser console, it just crashes because it doesn't like 5 megabytes of minified JavaScript in a string, in a source element. Like it doesn't like that. And we didn't want that experience for our consumers. So, but yeah, luckily you can just get rid of it again after it's loaded. So, but contrary to the previous hack, which is kind of still relevant because 6.8 is very fresh, just don't do this ever. Just go to Vite. You'll see with Vite it's so much easier. It's I don't know, it's amazing. So thank you so much to the Embroider Initiative for getting Vite over the line. It's meant the world to us. Yeah, I don't know, you'll see how easy it is. To show this, I've made a little repository where I go commit by commit. That will have a bit more information in this talk, so feel free to have a look at it after. it looks like this, which I can go here and then go this. Yeah, there you go. So it's about 10 steps, but the approach I took was an incredibly naive approach. I just kind of made an Angular app, I made an Ember app with Vite, and then I just imported whatever I could and just tried. And you run into a bunch of problems, but I kind of solved them incrementally. And by the step 9, you have a fully working library. But I'll give you the short rundown, the gist of it, basically. Actually, most of the work you have to do is not related to Vite at all, or packaging or bundling or whatever. You just have to convince Ember that it doesn't own the whole page. Like Ember, by default, is set up to just be an SPA, so it thinks it has control over the whole page, but that's no longer true. Just a second, yeah. The approach we're taking here, Preston kind of touched on this in his talk. There's different ways you can achieve this. We're doing the whole app approach, as he mentioned. So like I said, convince Ember it doesn't own the whole page. One of the first things we had to fix was this module prefix. Oh, I'm not actually showing the slides anymore. That would have been good to know. Yeah, that's what you should be looking at, right? That's what this is just an app, the standard app.ts file from a new Vite app. That's what that looks like. And once you try to do this, it's also explained in the repository, you'll figure out that this config stuff doesn't really work. There might be a way to make it work, but this import basically is empty. And so module prefix just runs into an undefined error, or it's undefined itself. And Ember really needs this module prefix for some reason. But it's just a string, which is just the name of your app. So just don't import it from config and you're good to go. Again, there might be a more clever way to do this, but you kind of don't need it. That's one thing. The second thing you need to do before it will even start is you need to disconnect the router from the page's location. So again, Ember assumes it can just control the location, but it can't, because it's now running inside of another app, which that app probably controls the location. But it's also really easy to do. You just add location type none, and also here in the router. So both in the app and the router. There are other location types which may be interesting to look at, but yeah, usually you don't really need. If you're doing this, you don't really need location, let's say, because you can always let the host app pass in the page that you want to render on or something like that. And then lastly, because you don't really want to import the app, and the app will just boot at import, like at the point where it's imported. That's not usually how you want your host app to interact with it. You want the host app to be able to say, hey, no, I'm going to, I don't know, maybe in an if statement or something, I'm going to choose when to launch the Ember app. But again, that's also easy. Just turn off auto boot. It's just true by default, so just turn it off. And then here's our function. That's the one that's the start of the talk, called Ember app. The reason I pull this out into a function is just for beauty, I guess, and ease of maintainability. So you can just make a function that does all the Ember-specific booting and launching. You don't want your consumers to know about app.create or app.visit. That's not an API you need to expose. So this just takes in an HTML element. It runs app.create. And yeah, again, autoboot false. I don't know if you have to set autoboot in all these places, but I really don't want this thing to autoboot. And there you go. That actually is enough. Yeah. So once you've got all this stuff, you build your Ember app with Vite, and you import those build files into whatever. That works. Which is crazy, because we haven't even done anything with Vite. So that means that the default Vite build is just ES modules, which of course we already know, but just I keep getting amazed by how ES modules just work everywhere, at least now, after 10 years or something. But let's be a bit professional. Like we do want to ship this as a library. One thing you'll find if you don't do this is that when Vite builds your app, the JS files will have fingerprinting, so they will have hashes based on the content, and that's super annoying to deal with if you don't want to change your package.json every time you change your code. That doesn't make any sense. But like it's Vite, so the configuration is like stupidly simple, and it just has something by default for that. It's called library mode, which is just this. And yeah, you say you're a library now, and you point to the entry point. You give it a name. The file name is arbitrary. That's just the file name that you're going to get in your dist folder. And then, like weirdly, I think this lib config should have been enough, but you do also have to convince rollup, which is underneath Vite, that your input file is this main file. And the main file is the one that has a render app function. And that's it. So before this configuration, this is what your dist folder looks like, because it's optimized for, to be an app, basically. So that's what I was talking about with this fingerprinting. This main.js file is fingerprinted, so every time you change your code, that UUID will change. So that's kind of hard to work with. But it does work. But once you do make your Vite configuration, this is what you get. So not only do you get a stable file now, you get actually two files by default. One is a module, an ES module, which is probably what you want to, let's say the main thing you're going to be using. But it also makes for you a UMD bundle for those rare situations that don't support ES modules yet. So to be fair, I haven't actually tested that UMD bundle in that situation because just about everything can just work with ES modules at this point. Of course, doing this in Vite, you also need to change your package.json because you need to tell your consuming app where to find these files. It's not going to find them by default. And that's all you need to do that. So exports alone should be enough. That's the modern way to basically tell bundlers and Node where to find your files. It's really handy. I wish it was a little bit more powerful than it is, but it is already really powerful. And yeah, for import, it's just whenever it's looking for an AES module, it'll use the import config. Whenever it's looking for a common JS module, it'll use the require config. And main and module are just the old versions of that. And of course, you need to also actually include your dist folder in the package bundle. Otherwise, it's just not going to be there when you publish to NPM. And that's it. I don't know. I'm just impressed by how easy this is, and I keep being amazed by Vite and how simple it is to understand and to use. The repo goes into a little bit more detail about CSS files and types. Those are also really easy to do. You just have to build them and put them in your dist folder, basically. But I didn't want to go too deep into that. There's a couple things you need to look out for when you're doing these kind of stunts. You are running an Ember app inside of another app. And a lot of Ember add-ons and things you might have done before, especially if you're converting an app that already existed, are going to be assuming that they live inside the whole page, especially things like media queries. So convert those to container queries. You can even do that like dynamically with post CSS, which is what we do. We just basically regex them into container queries, and it works better than you would assume. Another thing you need to consider is whether you want to use Shadow DOM or not. Shadow DOM can be really useful if you do have this CSS or if you want to be sure that your CSS doesn't pollute the host page. But it has a lot of caveats because, all of a sudden document.getElementById, for example, will no longer find the thing. Because if that thing that it's looking for is inside of Shadow DOM, it will just not see it, even if the Shadow DOM is open. And that's assumptions that add-ons might be making. So that's what we ran into. We had a couple of our own add-ons and some some other add-ons that use that kind of stuff, that use just document that get element by ID to find various specific elements. And we had to patch those out. So we have a couple of patch dependencies in this project. But that's all basically. And then I lastly wanted to just take a link back to render component again, and also one of Nullvox's experiments, Preston's experiments, which is like the smallest Ember app you can make at the moment. I think it's a really cool project to use the render component. And I wish I had time to combine them and to show that to you, but those would like combine perfectly, because then you get rid of the router and you don't have all that extra stuff. So there's like a really beautiful path now to just put Ember apps into other apps. That was basically my my talk. I just have some special thanks, and I have one more thing I need to mention, otherwise my boss will get mad at me. We are, wait a second, redpencil.io, like I already said, and we are hiring full stack developers. At the moment, only based in Belgium, but you know, we have colleagues that are not based in Belgium. So there are potentially opportunities, but I had to say that, like, for now, only in Belgium, just tax stuff, you know. But yeah, we're fully remote, and we have, as developers, we have a crazy amount of autonomy. It's just a really fun place to work at. They didn't tell me to say that, but that's just true. So special thanks. I want to thank Marijn Haverbeke, and I want to mainly highlight the fact that he exists. He's the guy who wrote CodeMirror and ProseMirror. They're in unbelievable libraries, and yeah, it's kind of crazy that just one man could just do that. And also want to thank my team. They're all here today. They're fantastic people to work with, and a lot of the stuff that I showed was not my doing, but our team doing. And I want to thank my girlfriend for the onion, the box, and the cute little drawings. I just want to implore people, please do make art if you can, or interact with people who make art if you can. You probably don't need AI art. Let's be honest. That's it. Thank you.